I'm curious before I do my presentation so I can tweak a little bit of as we go. Can you put your hand up if you do at least 10 grand a month in gross, this is gross revenue. And keep it up, do me a favor. Keep it up if you do 20 grand a month. 30? Okay, cool. So most of you are just ballparking somewhere between 10 and 25. Okay. So my presentation is going to be how we get you to 500K, the roadmap to follow to 500K. This is for brick and mortar folks. You can certainly tweak it for online, but this is for brick and mortar folks. So for those that don't know, I owned a gym for 12 years. I looked back and prepped for this presentation. It took me 4 years to hit 500K. So if you're in year 1 or year 2 or year 3 or even in the first 5, I would say that's probably realistic, like 100K a year growth. So one, hopefully for those that have never worked with me or know my story, some proof of concept. It took me 4 years to hit 500K. And then I looked 2 years later, I was doing 70K, 80K, then 90K months. So I believe, it's of my belief for brick and mortar locations that 500K is a massive tipping point. If you understand the concept of a tipping point, when we talk about things like ad spend, if you're making less than 500K a year gross, you don't have a big ad budget. It's just the reality. You have too many other fixed expenses. You can still run ads, but if I'm spending $1,500 a month and you're spending $500 a month, I'm gonna crush you, right? It's just the nature of the dollars, right? If I'm doing 500K, I have more staff than if you're doing 200K, which means I have more resources, which means when we do business visits, I can now double up and send 2 people out. You're only sending 1 person out. So I think at the 500K mark, you reach a massive tipping point in business where the rest of your expenses are largely fixed other than people, right? My rent is the same when I was making 500K versus in year 1 when I was making 100K, right? So a lot of your expenses are fixed, which means once you reach that 500K tipping point, it can all go back into people and marketing. And that's when you really scale. Also, I made a note here. I believe over the last 5 years, 150K for a gym owner is new 100K. When I first got into this industry, it was like the gold standard that as a trainer, you got to make 100 grand, right? I'm talking personal income now. It used to be the gold standard, right? And that's kind of more of a society thing, right? To try to make 6 figures of income, hit 100K. I don't know about you, but 100K doesn't go very far anymore in today's costs. So I believe 150K is the new kind of just like you're doing well where you're not struggling. You're certainly not rolling it, but you're making enough money that you can go on a couple of vacations a year. You can raise a family. You can have a good lifestyle. So if we look at profit margins of an average brick and mortar gym, you've got to gross 500K to be able to make 150K net. You're not going to net 150K off of a 300K gym. It's just never going to happen, right? There's too many other fixed expenses, your rents, your utilities, your insurances, your people. It's impossible. So again, 4 years, 5 years is a good runway. So I would say, I don't know all of how long you all have been in business, but if you've been in business for longer than 5 years, we can really sprint and get you to 500K quickly. If you're only in year 1, don't have this expectation of you're going to be 500K next year. It's just not realistic. A quick case study for you is, or some social proof for you. I run our boardroom group, and over half of our boardroom group is doing at least 500K a year. And I texted one of our clients in boardroom this morning and asked him if I could use him as a case study. Some of you know him. His name is Luke Sullivan. Luke started in IBA. When he first started working in our coaching group, he was doing 18K a month, and he had all independent contractors. When he graduated from IBA to boardroom, he was doing about 35 to 40K a month. This month, he'll do 85K. And he's got a full-time team, not coaching anymore, and he's a rock star. So I say that because it's possible. Like, it's not just my gym. I'm trying to shift. For those that don't know, I sold my gym in April of this year after 12 years to an employee of mine that was with me all 12 years. And so I try to shift. I still get questions every day like, what'd you do at Sperling? And although I still will pull from that for what I share from you, I try to also pull. We have several clients that are implementing stuff really well. And what you need to implement to do 500K is a lot different than what you have to implement to hit 100, 200, 300, which most of you are at. So I broke this down into 7 steps, and we'll break down each of the 7 steps. If you've never heard me talk before, my strong suit is not, Pat and I complement each other very well. I tend not to talk philosophy and I would say the softer side of coaching. I'm very analytical, very numbers driven. So you will probably have to do calculations after this and just take notes. I'll share the whole Google Doc with you in the group. So the first step is your pricing. I start with pricing because I don't care how many clients you add. If your pricing is wrong, you will never make any money. So we need to make sure you're priced right. So some simple frameworks that I would look at is there's 4 different models in this industry: one-on-one, small group, semi-private, and large group. Those are the only 4 models that exist. If you're large group, your ARM, which is your average revenue per member, take your gross revenue, divide it by your members. That's what your average membership pays. Needs to be at least $200 a month. So your middle option needs to be about $200 a month. Now in large group, that's becoming tougher and tougher, which means in large group, in order to make this money, you either have to have a boatload of clients. For example, one of our boardroom clients, Levi, has 400 clients, but at a $200 arm, $180 arm, that's still pretty good revenue. Or you need to have ancillary services. But most of you are in the other 2 categories, which is small group or semi-private. Your small group, you should have an average revenue, which means your middle membership should be around $300 a month. If you're in a higher market, that's going to be a little bit higher. If you're in a more rural market, that's going to be a little bit lower. But your average client should be paying around $300 a month. For my semi-private folks, and for clarity, the difference in my eyes between small group and semi-private is 2 things. Semi-private is a 4-to-1 ratio. Small group is a 6-to-1 ratio. Small group is templated programs that are personalized on the floor. Semi-private is personalized ahead of time in the programming. 4-to-1 in your semi-private, you need to have an ARM that is around $400, which means your middle membership and your average client pays $400 per month. So if we break that down and look at your current pricing, a common mistake that I made and many people make that are in this 200 to 300 grand mark that are trying to push to 500 and beyond is you are running a small group or semi-private model, but you are priced like large group pricing. And that will never work. I hate to kind of be the bearer of bad news, but it will never work. You need to get your pricing up to $300 to $400 a month in order to have a revenue that is going to support that 400 to 500K a year business. So whether that's a combination of price increases, 10, 15% every year to current people, and then of course get your new people like fresh in the door. That's the easiest thing. You can go on Canva right now, change your price sheet, and Monday have pricing that's good for new people going forward. They don't know what your pricing is today, but somebody walks in your door and signs up on Monday, you can have good pricing. Your current clients, we realize it's a bit of a challenge to, if you got that OG that's been with you for 8, 10, 12 years, for some of you that have been around a while, you got to steadily bump them up, because it's really hard to chase volume. I put some notes down here for you. For those of you that are small group, if you have a 300 arm, you only need 140 people to make $500,000 a year. And I say only because like 140 people is not a lot of clients. Like I know for some of you, it's a mindset shift, but 140 people in your town to pay for your training is not a lot, right? So it's not a high volume that we're chasing, which is good, but your arm, we can go figure out and talk marketing all day long to go get 140 clients. But if our arm, our average revenue per member is not $300 to $400, doesn't matter. Because if I can go at 140 people paying $100 a month, that's not going to be what I'm looking for, right? So your pricing needs to be there. Any one-on-one folks here? Okay, one-on-one, $800 arm. Your $800 arm on one. And again, these are, if you're in Manhattan, that's going to be different than if you're in rural Texas. But $800 a month on your one-on-one, that's about 50 clients. Your semi-private folks, $400 arm, you only need 100 clients, basically. 105 is what the math shakes out to be. So if you run semi-private and you can get an average revenue per month of $400, you only need 105 clients, which is pretty good. So again, from a strategy perspective, I just want to share those numbers to start, because if you're not there, if your average revenue per member is not there to match your model, and I'm happy to go through it in Q&A, we got to figure out a strategy to get you there, because more clients is not the answer. Pricing right is step one. So price right, we'll take questions at the end. Price right, current client price increases, all that stuff. As far as your pricing options, many of you are like we were talking about the Cheesecake Factory menu at lunch today. Many of you are like the Cheesecake Factory with your pricing. You have like 17 different options. We have a boardroom client that in MindBody has 72 different pricing options. It's ridiculous. Like, it's not needed. You have 2 options, maybe 3. 2, maybe 3. Like something like a twice a week and a 3 times a week. Twice a week and unlimited. You don't need 17 different options. 2, maybe 3. If you're going to do, let's say you do 2 and 3, right? Twice a week, 3 times a week, or what I like to pitch as 8 times and 12 times. You might do either 1 on the high end or 1 on the low end. If you're on the low end, my low end, like if you want to have a third option that say is only like the once a week option, I like that for gyms that work with highly injured or highly like travel heavy markets. Because, for example, Luke, that client that I referenced earlier, he's in Scottsdale, Arizona. So obviously very travel heavy, it's a lot of snowbirds, stuff like that. So you can get people that are only on once a week and then maybe do distance coaching, the other part of their training. Or if you're working with somebody that's injured and fitness is really not the objective, it's really just kind of rehab to some degree, they might only need or have the bandwidth if they're doing other kind of rehab therapy type services to see you once a week. So, but if you're Gen Pop and you work with like the 40 to 60 general healthy crowd, frankly, you don't need a once a week option, because they take up space. They're just as much work as the 2 and 3 times a week, and they pay less. So I would then, if you're going to have a third, it's in my eyes optional. I would then go on the high end and say, let me have an unlimited for the 10% that want the unlimited feeling, tack an unlimited membership on there. So 2 to 3 memberships on your price sheet. Hopefully this is common, but I've learned it's not common. So industry evolution, when I first got in the industry, it was sessions and packages, right? Sessions and packages. And then I was part of that like adoption into reoccurring billing, and everything moved to reoccurring billing. And now there's this, what I would consider to be standard practice at this point, which is to bill every 4 weeks and auto renew. So bill every 4 weeks and auto renew. I did it in my gym before I sold it, and we had no pushback. For context, we had 350 people with an average arm of $300. So it's not a price point thing. It's just a roadblock. Billing every 4 weeks is a 13th pay cycle, right? So you get a little bit of a revenue boost there. And for many of you that do like 4-week training blocks, it kind of matches your training block as well. But it's mostly for the 13th payment. And you'll get the 5 clients that push back and say they want their charge on the same day every month, and you just customer service that, do the math times 13, then divide it by 12, and that's their monthly charge, right? But 99% of the people aren't going to care, and you get the 13th billing. The other thing that I would hope is standard, and just remember, is an auto renew. As long as it's good with your state, double check that. If you live in California, everything's wrong and you can't do anything, but most every other state is pretty good with auto renew. I don't want to spend any customer service time on memberships, right? As you scale, you want to reduce the amount of administrative time. You don't want to add to it. And so if people are having to manually bill or ask about renewing their membership or any of that stuff, like nothing else do we have to, like Netflix comes out of my account every month, no matter what, whether I use it or not, right? If you hire, speaking about primary care and kind of the cash-based stuff, there's a lot of push towards that direct-based, membership-based model. That practitioner is charging $150 a month as a concierge doc, and that's going to come out of your account whether you use them or not. So I think 10 years ago, for those of you that have been in the industry a long time, the whole auto renew thing was kind of new. Like people didn't have a lot of subscriptions. And I think it's just, we're stuck in our ways and we think that we need to like manually renew people. So everything should be auto-renew every 4 weeks, okay? And then the last thing on pricing is display it, and I'll talk a little bit about this under the sales part, but we want to display it weekly. It's a small thing, but I think it does help a little bit, especially given our prices. So for example, if you want to have a $400 arm, or you're charging $400-ish, you might present it as $99 a week, right? You might present it as $99 a week. So it just sits a little bit easier with the gut, to be honest with you. You're able to talk about it, I think, a little bit more confidently. This is not a whole sales training, but what many of you face is your clients are way wealthier than you. And you are mentally stuck that paying $400, $300 for training is unheard of. Like, you would never pay it because you are the expert. But like, you will gladly pay $300 to $400. I'm pretty sure your accountant costs more than that, right? So some of this is helping you with the conversations sitting at $99 a week, $79 a week, $69 a week. It's just easier off the tongue. And then what you say at the sales table is we bill every 4 weeks. This membership that I recommend for you is $99 a week. We bill every 4 weeks. And so then they see whatever 99 times 4 is, $396 every 4 weeks. So write down your questions on pricing. We'll certainly break that down in the Q&A if we need to. Step 2 is schedule. So we have to be scheduled right. The challenge in this industry is there is very much you have to have some degree of putting the cart before the horse. You can't have an empty schedule, nothing on the schedule, and be trying to add clients. If all of your sessions are full and you're trying to add clients, it's not going to work, right? So I understand, and there's some empathy there of you have to kind of overschedule in the beginning to make sure that there's enough sessions on your schedule. In this doc, I worked on a calculator over the last couple months. There's several things in the calculator, one of which it will tell you if you plug in how many clients you have and what model you run, it will tell you how many sessions you should have on your schedule per week. So like anything, don't get caught in the middle. Meaning some of you have like 8 sessions on your schedule and you're trying to add clients and every session is full, or you only offer sessions at these like handful select amount of times. And in today's world where everybody wants convenience and flexibility, that's never going to work, because as we spoke about, price may not be the barrier. It may just be, I can't make those time slots. Or on the flip side, I've seen it where folks have 50 sessions on their schedule and they have 50 clients. It's like, you don't need that many sessions, right? So there's kind of this happy medium where you don't want to be understaffed, you don't want to be overstaffed. We'll talk about staff. I believe that's step 6, but the scheduling is certainly something I personally don't think is talked about enough. Like, how many sessions should be on your schedule each week, evaluating it on a regular basis, not just setting these times and forgetting about it. Schedule is seasonal, right? Your scheduling should be seasonal. Our business is seasonal, whether we like it or not. As far as your session times, this is a big one I learned. So your session times, as far as how duration, 25 or 55. 25 or 55. As you scale, hour-long sessions are really hard. And I share that from experience of having teams that run back-to-back-to-back sessions. They will burn out very quickly because they have no break. Or you will end up having to have all these gaps. So you'll have a session that runs from 6 to 7, and then another session that runs from 7:30 to 8:30. And if you compound that over the day, over the week, you could have just stacked those and fit in more sessions with the same amount of payroll because the coach is already there. At the same time, I ran on the hour or on the half hour for a long time, but then your coach has no break. And the problem with that is obviously for their sanity, like they have to go to the bathroom and they have to be able to like not just be client facing every minute of every day, but also there's this ripple effect that happens in your client experience. So let's say that you are running hour-long sessions and you did cram them 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and it's an hour-long session. If I come in as your coach and I coach 6 o'clock, you all know the 6 o'clock people, they stay a few minutes after, they end up chatting, coach ends up chatting with them, oh crap, I gotta go take a pee. They go pee, and now they're 5 minutes late. It's how doctors are always late, right? It's not their first patient. It's the afternoon patients that get screwed because they just keep 5 minutes late for the next session. Then that session runs over, so they feel like they have to over-deliver to that session because they were a few minutes late. It's this constant client experience battle. It will be eliminated if you communicate to your clients our sessions are 50 or 55 minutes long, or 25 minutes long if you run half-hour sessions. It creates a standard that the session is over, and it gives, as silly as it sounds, 5 minutes in the training world is a lot. That's enough to go to the bathroom, go see who's in my next session, grab a sip of water, and get back on the floor. But if you don't create that buffer, as you scale, you will either run into client experience issues, or you will have to. We have a couple that runs a gym out of Columbus, Ohio, Melanie and Jason Ash. They were running hour-long sessions, and they were putting these big gaps in between their sessions because they didn't want to stress the coach out. But then as they grew from 150, 200, now they're in mid 200 clients, they run into staffing issues because these staff members have these huge gaps, and now they can't offer enough sessions. So you have to squish it back and give yourself that buffer without rolling into the next hour. Some obvious ones that I say to make sure you just check this box, which is in regards to scheduling, make sure they can sign up on an app. Again, 10 years ago, it used to be seen as going above and beyond that you schedule for your clients. Now, if you have to schedule for me, it's an inconvenience. I want to be able to schedule on my own. Give me my app. Let me schedule on my own. I don't want any administrative time spent on scheduling. Zero. Schedule on an app. And then here's a big one that people get stuck on. And again, I'm happy to troubleshoot scenarios in Q&A if you're dealing with this. Let's get you away from people being locked into a specific time. It's hard to scale. Can you do it? Yes. But if you have the opportunity to, if I'm a client, I want to just be able to see your time slots. And if one day I want to show up at 9 a.m. and the next session I want to show up at 5 a.m., if there's a slot open, I should be able to do that. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, that was fine. But I think now you're losing a lot of people if you're too rigid with your times, meaning I sign up for Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 o'clock. It's an antiquated way of doing things, and the modern consumer is all about convenience. So if you don't adopt to that, you're going to be trying to cram this, like for those of you that have kids. Every day you wake up and you're like, oh, shoot, I can't do that at 9 because this kid's sick. Or, oh, I forgot about that afternoon doctor's appointment. I have to go take them to that, so I can't go to that 3 o'clock session. I can go this morning at 9. So you want that convenience, you want that flexibility within it. And it also it spreads things out. It doesn't create, everybody wants to train at the same time. It doesn't create these log jams that we face. Or I should say it reduces the amount of log jams that we face. And then another one with the schedule is a wait list. We want a wait list process that is clear across all 3 parties. You have 3 parties in your business. Party number 1 is your clients. Party number 2 is your team. And then party number 3 is you as the owner. All 3 of those need to be clear on every single policy, one of which is wait list. So if I had your team here and your clients here and I said, what is the wait list policy of your gym? They should all be able to spit it out. Because if the team doesn't know it, they're getting questions whether you know it or not in the sessions about it. And if the clients don't know about it, they're not following it. And if you don't know about it or have it, then it's certainly not happening. So what is a wait list? A wait list should be matched to the amount of churn your session has. So for example, if I sign up for a session, let's say I can sign up for a session next month, December, throw a date on the dart, a dart on date. December 8th at 9 a.m. I sign up for your 9 a.m. session on December 8th. All of a sudden, next week I learn that I have a commitment on December 8th and I have to take myself out. That's happening in the background if you use an app for signups, right? And you don't even see that. And so when you have 50 clients, that's not a big deal. When you have 75, 100, 150 clients, that's happening multiple times a day, every single day. And so if you don't have a wait list, there are people that may have that as their preferred time. Somebody takes themselves out because of that commitment. And now that waitlist person can get bumped in. We found on average, this is not specific to everybody, but this is what we looked into. We found on average around 3 people per session were changing before the session actually started. meaning they had signed up for that time. And by the time the session actually came, 3 of those 6, we ran 6 to 1 small group, 3 of those 6 had found a different time. So again, that's not your number, but you have to find your number. And your wait list, so our wait list was 3 people, right? So your wait list should match your session churn. And then last thing with schedule is I recommend doing a scheduled release. Quarterly is probably the best rhythm. I actually did monthly, and in hindsight, if I was doing it all over again, I would do quarterly. So what is a schedule release? A schedule release is every quarter, you release the next block of schedule. So every 3 months, you release the next block of schedule. There are several reasons for doing this. Number 1 is it forces you to put the schedule underneath a microscope every 3 months and say, are all these times necessary? It also is a customer service thing. If you have a trainer that is on vacation the week of January 15th and you need to move around that week's training times, you can do that now when you're doing the next 90-day schedule. And now the team knows ahead of time, now the clients know ahead of time. It creates internal deadlines. So now on that deadline of the quarterly block, I now know on January 1st, January, February, and March's schedule is getting released. That means I have to have my shit together and have it done and organized and up. Team has to be on the same page. So we ran a standard that was, hey, we're going to do, we did ours monthly, but you can take this same thing quarterly. Hey, schedule goes live on the 15th of the month for the following month. If you have any changes for next month, we need to know before then. Otherwise, schedule's live and that's your responsibility. So it creates internal standards, it creates expectations for the clients, and it puts the schedule underneath the microscope. The example I use is many of you train teachers. I can bet you that teachers during the school year come at a different time than if they're off during the summer. So an example for us was we had a very popular 3 o'clock session. We didn't do any sports performance. 3 o'clock was very heavy for teachers for us because school got out around 2:30. They could pop right over, not have to go home. 3 o'clock session was very busy. During June, July, and August, we didn't have a 3 o'clock session. It wasn't worth it, right? Who's going to train at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Maine summer? Nobody. The kids are at the beach, the adults are working, the teachers probably wanted to come in the morning, right? It allows us to make slight tweaks every quarter. So that's your step number 2 on schedule. So you have your price right, you have your schedule right. Now, step number 3, now we can put people in the door, which is marketing. And I'll cover this at a very high level because I know Fred's got a whole marketing presentation tomorrow. But a couple kind of what I would consider to be essentials for marketing. Number 1 is your website. Follow a 5-page framework. Many of your websites have all these drop downs and tabs and this, that, and the other thing. And people nowadays get too lost, too confused, etc. Your website has 5 pages and 5 pages only. The first one is your home page. The second one is your about page. The third one is your program page. The fourth one is your stories page. And the fifth one is your contact page. If you want a framework for this that works really well, Story Brand, great book, by the way, they have an awesome website framework. But your about page, you should tell your story. If I go on your website, yes, I want to see client stories. Yes, I want to see what your program is. But most of us are selling some version of personal training. So I would like to hear, like you see it all the time, for those of you that, many of you on your, either on your connection or through travel have flown through Atlanta, right? If you walk through the connections and you don't take the train, when you walked from terminal to terminal in Atlanta, they have the boards up on the wall of the history of Atlanta. And I was walking through on a trip a couple weeks ago, and I'm walking through, and I had seen it before, but I'm watching people in Atlanta. If you don't know, it's the busiest airport in the country. All these people are walking like this, looking at it, reading the history. So I think as a small business, as somebody who is selling personal training, your story, the history of why you started your gym, because most of you have a deep-rooted reason as to why you started the gym. It was not to make money. it was because of a deep-rooted reason, whether that was your personal struggle, whether that was because you lost somebody in your family because of health reasons, and so now you want to do this, you faced a life-altering injury. It's usually, in my experience for most of us, it's usually some deep-rooted reason as to why you started your gym. That about page is to tell your story about the company, not necessarily about you as a person, but why you started the gym, what the gym is for, who it's looking to serve. There is a percentage of the market that wants to read the about of a company. It's really powerful. Your program obviously talks about your program. It should speak purely to the results of your program, not the details of like client ratios and time slots and all this other stuff. Just talk about the results and the environment. We have the most competitive environment in our industry. Your clients don't know about 6-to-1 versus 4-to-1, semi-private versus small group. That means nothing to them. But what does is, hey, you walk through the door and you don't have to worry about a single thing. You walk through the door and there's going to be a coach with you at every single workout. That is language that they can understand. And that's where your program page should talk about is what is it like in a typical session and what are the results that I can expect. Your stories page is an entire page where people can scroll. I believe it's still up if you want to test it. You can go to sperlingfitness.com/stories and you literally have to scroll for like 5 minutes to get to the bottom of it. And it's just all client testimonials. And I don't know if people watch them or people view them or what, but there is no denying that when you go to our website, I look at every other gym in our town and it's all either stock photos or maybe a handful of testimonials. So we all say that we get results, but one thing I'm going to talk about under the sessions is I think we do a phenomenal job at getting results. We do a terrible job at showing that we get results. We talk about it, but we don't show it. You have all these cool, and I'm not talking the drastic transformations. I'm talking the Susie who walked in and said, I love this place. It's my favorite hour of the day. I come here 3 days a week after work. It's a great stress relief, right? That's what most of you need, just in a quick iPhone testimonial, but there's a laundry list of them on the stories page. So that's your quick high-level website. Let's make sure you have your Google My Business profile. We just started with a new client. He's got 2 locations, and I was doing some research before I started working with him, and he's part of a franchise, and I tried to find his second location, and I couldn't. I Googled personal training in his town, and he didn't come up at all. And it's because his Google My Business profile wasn't updated. So it seems very basic. I know most of you do that really well, but 99% of people Google stuff. They do not search for it on Facebook. They Google it. So make sure your Google My Business profile is up to date, Google reviews, etc. Obviously, by now, the 3-time-a-week email with the super signature. The biggest thing with the super signature I will remind everybody of is don't be lazy. Don't set the same super signature for the month. Change it weekly. If it's not getting replies, change it. If it's not getting replies, that means it's not good enough. So change the super signature, change the words, change what the thing is, change it. And then finally, don't feel like every single email has to have a super signature, because eventually if you're sending 3 times a week email, everything has 3 things at the bottom, that now loses the effect of the pattern interrupt. It's now no longer the purple cow. It's now just part of every email you send. So don't be afraid to just have a PS with 1 thing. Like you can mix up the pattern of what your super signature looks like. And then other marketing things, your engagement emails, you all have copies of these engagement emails, like clockwork, twice a month, middle of the month, end of the month, 2 engagement emails. Julian's one of the clients in Project 500, and every month he sends me a doc. He has a whole Google Doc of offers that go out, text and email. All this is a Google Doc. And you send it to your admin, right? And your admin posts it. It's like, guys, this is just like clockwork, rudimentary stuff, but you can't forget about it. Every month, like clockwork, twice a month, engagement emails. If you don't know what those are, we can talk about them, but you have a whole Google Doc with like, I don't know, 3 dozen examples of them. All right, let me move on to your follow-up and sale. So now you've marketed people. Hopefully you're getting them in the door, okay? So now let's break down the things that you have to have in place for follow-up and sell. So the hardest part is in business, in my opinion, is not generating leads. You can work with BJ on the ad side, implement our marketing stuff for grassroots stuff. Lead generation, in my opinion, once you understand the core components of it, is not hard. The harder skill is taking a lead and getting them to an appointment. So we really need to master the art of follow-up. And follow-up is designed to book the appointment. I can't stress this enough. This was like a huge shift for me when I focused on this. When a lead comes in, all of you hopefully have some appointment, right? It could be a call, it could be a strategy session, a success session, whatever you call it. All of you have that one thing that you do where you get to know them. Follow-up is designed to set that appointment. That's it. It's to get them to show to that appointment. Don't try to sell your membership, talk about how things work, do all this crazy stuff. Just get them to the appointment. Then at the appointment, we can get to know them, talk about our program, etc. But many of us make the mistake of either just overwhelming them with so much information about your program and how it works and what the memberships are and what the structure is and all this stuff before they even met with you. Or you have like a 7-step process. One of our clients, he had this like giant questionnaire that you had to fill out before you came in the door. And then you had to do a phone call and then you could come in the door. I'm like, you do realize that like at Fred's gym, I'm pretty sure I could just like get the app, click a button and have a membership today. So it's like, that's what you're competing against. So we can't make it so hard to get people in the door. Follow up, say, hey, thanks for inquiring. Love to learn more about you and see if you're a good fit here. I have Tuesday or Wednesday open. Which one's better for you? The follow-up is all designed to book the appointment. It's not to sell the membership. My second note on follow-up is I'm all for automation, except for I think it makes us lazy. I'm all for it. I want you to use it, but I think it makes you a little lazy. And that's just in my experience, because I caught myself getting lazy. Because for context, for years and years, I was anti-automation. Everything was manual follow-up. And then we implemented things with Nomly and some of the automation campaigns, and you guys have it in automatic members, all that stuff. And I started realizing that these messages were going out, and it's just like anything else. If it's not in front of your face, you kind of forget that it's happening. And so if you are sending out automated texts and emails, just make sure that A, you're paying attention to are people actually replying? And if they're not replying, you need to manually interject. The modern consumer knows if it's automated. Doesn't mean it's bad, but most consumers know if it's automated or not. Matt commented on my Hey Dudes shoes this morning. And many of you wore rainbow Crocs at our last meeting. Switch to Hey Dudes has a phenomenal automated text campaign after you buy from them. Phenomenal. I know it's automated. Doesn't stop me from buying it. So I'm not saying automated is bad, right? You can put your automations in place with your texts and your emails, but make sure if they don't reply, you are watching that and manually interject because they will sense that. And then the final thing with follow-up is make sure we pick up the phone. So Jeff Nelson, been a longtime client of ours, probably our biggest training gym, does about $1.5 million a year in revenue, business has been around for 20 years, big business, very complicated business. And for many reasons, most of which the volume of leads, they get about 100 plus leads a month. His front desk staff was not calling his leads. They were just relying on the text and email, and they were doing okay. When I had them implement the phone call, they literally doubled the amount of appointments they got in a month. Doubled. So the phone call is you're again, similar to the appointment booking. The goal is to book the appointment. The goal of the phone call is not to get them to answer. I know they're not going to answer. The goal of the phone call is to bring a real life human behind the brand. To say, hey, this is Doug from Sperling Fitness. I saw you filled out our form. I'm going to go ahead and send you a text and an email right after this. Go ahead and answer whichever one's best for you. So I'm not asking them to call me back. If they do, great. But I'm driving them to the text and the email. And I can put emotion, I can put tone, I can put a real life human behind it, which text and email will never be able to do. On the sales side, this is usually not a weakness, right? We usually don't have like people raising their hands saying, hey, I'm not closing enough people. I'm meeting with them, but they're not signing up. Usually not a problem. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this. However, a reminder, 1 appointment, not 2, 3, 4 appointments for me to start working with you. I'm okay with 1. Like, I don't want to just be a revolving door pushing people in if I'm not a health club. But 1 appointment, and set the expectation for how long it is. I recommend 30 to 45 minutes and not longer. Because again, scalability, if you want to run back to back, you only get a couple hours a day that you're not training that you can do appointments. Keep them short and sweet. And when it gets to the point of showing the pricing, you want to get to a point where your pricing is on a nice, graphically designed, branded to your colors, 11, I like to do it on 11 by 17, gets a little bit oversized, sheet. So imagine if I sit down with you and just think of how this feels. And for some people it wouldn't matter, but there's a large population that it does matter. I sit down with you, let's say I'm sitting down with Joe and Joe's interested in training. And I say, all right, Joe, I got no papers, nothing. I say, all right, Joe, it's going to cost $300 a month to go here. Instantly, there's a percentage of your population that will say, is that really the price? Can I see different options? And you may have your pricing memorized, but by putting a price sheet in between you and them, it does a handful of things. 1, it puts a professionalism to it as far as it's visually displayed. 2, it allows you to price anchor. So price anchoring is, if you can't close somebody, it's one of the easiest things to do if price is an objection. If you have your 2 options that I spoke about earlier, you can say, hey, Joe, I don't think you need the unlimited pricing option. It's $99 a week. Based upon what I learned from you today, you don't need that. And I can literally point to it. But what I do recommend for you is our optimal membership. It's $69 a week, gives you everything you need. I now just anchored and said, hey, here's this high price thing. You don't need anything. You don't need that. You need this instead. And so it's a very simple way, but I can't do that if I'm just listing prices off the top of my head. And then final piece on the sales side. So you've got the commitment. They're saying yes. Now this is where people rush it through and they walk out the door. Take the time to go through at this point. You've gotten the yes, right? Take the time to go through your agreement, your membership agreement. Think about your current clients today that abuse the things that frustrate you. Like if you have a cancellation policy that veteran clients don't pay attention to, or you have a no-show policy that people don't follow, or you have a travel or suspension policy that people don't know about. If you have your agreement listed out, everything that you deem important from a behavioral standpoint, this is not for legal reasons, right? I'm not an attorney and who knows if this agreement is enforceable or not. That's not what I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is I want to drive home the importance of the 2, 3, 4 policies that we have here that if I don't take the time right now to go over, you're going to abuse at some point. And as silly as it sounds, by pausing in each paragraph and having you initial, it's not about the legality of the initial. It's that there's a blank and I'm going to have to fill that in, which means I'm going to have to talk about it. And I'm not going to skip it. And it's a moment to pause and to make sure you talk about it. So that's why we like the initialing of the agreement. All right, moving on. They're now a client. They're onboarded. We need to onboard them. So magic of onboarding. I want to pause for a second and say we're now over halfway through this, and this client literally just signed up. So this is how important and orchestrated and choreographed the beginning of your process needs to be. So when you onboard somebody, have a very simple checklist. I know it's repetitive, and I know it's sometimes not a lot, but you should have a very simple checklist of here are the 5 things every new client needs to do, I need to do for a client. Maybe you need to add them to a programming app. Maybe you want to send them a welcome email, right? All of you probably have those handful of things that you do with every new client. Turn that into a very simple checklist. That way, every time somebody gets new, you can just go boom. It's also, pro tip, a very easy thing to delegate to an admin. Sales is the last thing you should delegate But as soon as you get that yes, that whole thing can be automated or delegated to an admin. Once you create your checklist, it's just follow the checklist. Onboarding is a very checklist thing, right? Add them to the app, send this email, tag them in the software. It's very checklist. When they sign up, I do recommend giving them some form of welcome bag, some form of thank you for signing up, here is something. Doesn't have to be a bag, it can be something else, but it should be something physical. The reason why it's physical, it's not about the item, it's that they have to walk out with something. So there's a great book, by the way, called Selling the Invisible. We sell the invisible. We sell a service, we sell fitness, which you can't see. It's a transformation, you can't touch it. It's not like I'm trying to sell you this chair. So if I leave and just committed to $300 a month with you and I have nothing to show for it, it just sits a little heavy, and that's where buyer's remorse comes in. And then they tell their husband that they just spent $300 a month in a gym membership. You've all had that call from the husband that's like, hey, I don't think my wife can do this, right? It's buyer's remorse. So one of the ways to prevent that is to give them something. We used to go on, I think it was like 4imprint or Discount Mugs or any of those kind of wholesale places, and just get like reusable grocery totes. They're like 60 something cents a piece. And you can put anything you want in the welcome bag. Doesn't have to be much, but a little bit of maybe a postcard on how, if you use an app for scheduling, maybe there's a postcard on how to put the app on their phone. If you have a team, maybe there's a team bio page, something in the welcome bag. The point is they walk out with something. Now, notice that I did not add a t-shirt to the welcome bag. It's a very common thing. For years and years, we would give them t-shirts, right? Or any type, fill in the blank with any type of swag. For training gyms, what I like to do is you hold on to that t-shirt until their first workout. And then at the end of their first workout, you give them the t-shirt and say, hey, we give this to everybody that completes their first workout. Awesome job. Here you go. You can't buy this t-shirt. It's only for people who complete their first workout at Sperling. It's just another touch point, right? It's easy. We had literally a basket in the gym on the corner, like on a little stand. And they were just elastic wrap t-shirts, like $5 Gildan t-shirts. It was not nice quality t-shirts, but it was about this. A lot of you get frustrated when coaches like just let clients walk out the door and not like say goodbye to them or compliment them. Imagine if a first workout client just walks out the door. A lot of you, right now, you're like, that will never happen. If you have a team, that will happen. And so the first workout t-shirt is a moment where the coach can literally say, hey, here's this t-shirt. Awesome job today. Super proud of you for making this amazing commitment to us. You did a great job today. I'll see you on Thursday. It's not about the t-shirt. It's about the moment that happens right there. And that client, if you execute that well, you role play that well, will have an amazing onboarding experience and never want to leave. All right, let's go on to, we've onboarded them. One quick note on onboarding real fast. Your campaign. Notice I didn't talk about anything with campaign, right? It was all what you did in person and the first workout. If you do an onboarding campaign, meaning you drip them content, I recommend that content be about utilization of your services. How do I use my membership to the best of the ability? Like, what do the best clients do? How do I schedule? Is there a piece on how do I schedule? What do I do if I'm injured? What do I do if I'm traveling? How many times a week should I work out? It's all about utilization. Don't overwhelm them with content on education. We tend to think onboarding needs to be like more fitness and nutrition tips. But if you study the software world, software is all about, there's a massive stickiness to software, and it's all measured in the beginning at utilization. If I utilize the software, I'm not gonna stop it. And our service is the same thing. Nobody in your gym this month, if they show up 10 times, will cancel next month. Nobody. You all know the people that cancel your memberships are people that decreased attendance or did not show at all this month. It's a utilization issue. So if in onboarding, we can remind them here's how you utilize this membership, it's a much better onboarding campaign than simple education. All right. Now they've been a client, we've onboarded them. How do we turn them into a raving fan? So great book, by the way, great concept, create a raving fan. Raving fans stay longer, pay longer, they refer. You all know your raving fans, right? They're your clients that just shout you from the rooftop. They speak positively. They're low maintenance. That's what you're trying to create. So a couple things we can do to create it. Number one is we need to figure out how we're going to reward them. We need to figure out how we're going to recognize and reward them. They are in some degrees like children, where if we want this behavior repeated, we need to reward the behavior. So the biggest thing to celebrate in your gyms is attendance. Not PRs, not transformations, it's attendance. Because attendance is the utilization I'm talking about. If I attend the gym, I'm not leaving. Most of us don't deal with customer service issues. We deal with utilization issues. So attendance is what I want to celebrate. So can you have a chalkboard in the gym that celebrates everybody that showed up at least 10 times last month? Can you have milestones of clients that hit 250 visits, 500 visits? Figure out ways to celebrate attendance and reward them for that attendance. You see some gyms are starting to do it. We loved it. Real cheap to do, by the way, if you don't already do it. It's called foam core. It's like a plasticky kind of PVC print material. You make these posters that are about yay big, kind of where they can hold it like this. And you put like 25 visits, 50 visits, and you just have them in your office. And then when somebody hits that milestone, hold up the board, take a picture, post it on social. It's a win for the client because they get recognized, but also great social media content, etc. When we ran ads for our gym, I'm pretty sure like 90% of the pictures were of clients holding up those boards. And the reason why those boards are so powerful on social from a marketing perspective, we see the recognition piece of it for the client, but it's because that client, A, is local. So maybe somebody in the local community knows that client, is like, oh, I know her, let me text her. I was thinking about joining there. I'm going to text her and see how she likes it. Or it's like an overweight ideal client and they're like, oh, that kind of looks like me. I can probably do that. So those little things I think go a long way on the marketing side, but of course it's great from a recognition standpoint. So figure out one or two ways you need to recognize. And then as I spoke about earlier, results. So we're great at getting results. We got to figure out a way to show results. Show them that they're getting results. So this can be done in a couple different ways. The three ways that we've seen it done are if you use an app for programming that has like the graphs and the visuals and all that. Many of the modern programming apps have that, where you can screenshot it and they can see it on the app. And part of your process is every month, every client's going to get one screenshot of their progress texted to them. And so if you got 50 clients and there's 2 of you, each of you have 25 people, and you're going to, at some point during the month, screenshot their app and text it to them. It's simple, it's easy, but it reminds them that they're getting results. The one that I love, it's in the sports performance world right now, but it's not in Gen Pop to my knowledge. It may be at the franchise level, but I haven't seen any training gym do it well. We have a sports performance guy that every 90 days he retests his athletes, and the coaches plug that info into an app and it pushes a PDF report to the parent. And so they can see a graph of, hey, my vertical jump has gone up this much, my broad jump has gone up this much, whatever the 10-yard dash, whatever the test is. But people need to be reminded of the results. They've gotten results, but they need to be reminded. They need to be put it in front of their face. And then the third one is not as scalable, but very powerful. And that's doing, a lot of our clients will do like 90-day check-ins with clients, right? Once every 90 days, they schedule an appointment with them. They sit down or talk on the phone. The key with those appointments, if you do them, is make sure you remind them. Like, we spend a lot of time, I think, as an industry talking about like what's next for the client. Like, what are your goals and what do you want to work on next? But make sure we start off that meeting with reminding them the progress that they've made. Super important. If somebody's getting results, they're not leaving your gym. And that's how they become a raving fan. All right, 2 more to go. Step number 6 is you got to staff this right. So 500K gym, nobody's doing a 500K gym without staff. It's impossible. Even your high-end private trainers, if they're doing it solopreneur, they're maybe making 200, 300 grand a year, right? If you want to have a 500K gym, you are going to need to like the staff side of it. You don't need to love it, but you at least need to like it. You don't need that many staff for a 500K gym, but you will need more than yourself and just the occasional part-timer. So in the calculator that I will share in this doc, there's a staffing tab, and you can plug in how many clients you have, what your ratio is, and it will tell you how many coaches you need, etc. But a ballpark is 75 to 1. For every 75 clients, you need 1 full-time coach. That's full-time, so that might mean you have 2 part-timers combined equal a full-time. 40% of your revenue should go towards your people. 40% of your gross revenue should go towards your people. The question I get every single time I say that is, does that include your payroll? It includes your payroll as the manager of your gym. Most of you in this room are the manager of your gym, meaning you do the sales, you do the marketing, you run the day-to-day. So you should have a manager salary, and then the owner, like Pat talked about earlier, the 3 ways you get paid, the owner doesn't have any day-to-day involvement. They just take draws. It's like an investment, right? They take the draw. But part of that should be your manager salary. That's how you determine how much money you have to pay a staff, is 40% of your revenue goes towards payroll. Some other nuggets on staff. We got to have clear standards of expectations. We got to have clear standards of expectations. As Pat mentioned earlier, I love acronyms and alliterations for your team. And it's kind of become a joke, but it's because they remember it. I guarantee you, if you had my staff up here from a year ago and I said, what are the 5 Ps? They'd all be able to spit them out. Some of you even know what the 5 Ps are, because it's all I talk about with good coaching, right? It's punctual, it's prepared, it's present, it's pace, it's posture. Some of you are saying the messages, but we're trying to say the same thing, but we end up saying it 100 different ways. And thus it never gets remembered. So when I'm creating standards with my team, standards are certainly there, but they need to be repeated the same exact way every single time. So for example, I created the 5 Ps with my team because I constantly found myself talking about, listen, you got to be prepared for your sessions. And I talked about that 100 different ways, but ultimately it came down to, we got to be prepared. We got to be punctual. You can't be late. You got to be on time, right? You all have that trainer that's always late for a session. Let's be punctual. Let's be present. Let's make sure we're not talking about our boyfriend, our girlfriend, or personal issues, or what's going on outside of here. We're present in the session with the people in the session. Your new coaches, they're awful at pace. You all know that. The new coach just stands there and watches. We pace. Coaching is all about covering the floor. If I had paint on the bottom of my shoes right now, I would want to cover this entire floor with paint. That's how I know I'm a good coach. I pace around a lot. But again, I'm talking about that with my team, but if I don't use common language, it's like why sports teams have play names, right? Every play has a name, and then the players remember the name. So every standard has an acronym or a name to it. So love things like the 5 Ps, but you don't have to take that one. You can just create your own internal culture of what your standards are, but your team has to be clear on what the standard is. And then if you have more than 3 people on your team, you do need to have some type of meeting cadence. Meeting cadence is getting together as a team. For those of you that have more than 5, it should be weekly. Between 3 and 5, you can probably get away with bi-weekly or monthly. But you have to have a cadence with your meeting. And everybody hears the word meeting and they cringe. All meetings are, in this industry, is practice. Practice. That's all it is. So every single meeting is practice. So for those of you that played sports, I guarantee you, other than maybe basketball, there's a real indiscrepancy of practice to play ratio. Like in football, you play once a week and practice 5 days. In most sports, you practice a heck of a lot longer than you play. And yet in our industry, your coaches are on game day, which is our sessions, 20, 30 hours a week, and yet they practice never. It doesn't make any sense. We got to practice. So that's all a meeting is in our industry. Don't get, for those of you that had like negative corporate experiences with meetings and sitting behind, that's not what a meeting is. A meeting is saying, if this was my team, I would say, hey team, so let's do a little role play of a quick team meeting. Hey team, how was your week? Give me one win from the week. Boom, boom. Cool. Hey, here's 3 things I want you to remember about this upcoming week. Boom, boom. All right, today we're going to role play how to greet a client on their first day. Ready? Julian, you're the client, I'm the coach. Go. And you just cycle through everybody. And you keep going until everybody gets it good. It's like running the play over and over again. But you have to do that. You have to do it. And the more people you have on your team, the higher the frequency. If you have a big team, it's weekly. If you have a medium-sized team, it's monthly. And monthly is probably about as far as I'd take it. Right? But we got to practice. All right, last one. Stick with me. You got to make money, which is the profit side of this, which means you need to know your numbers. We talked about that this morning. Knowing your numbers comes down to 3 things: your scoreboard, your spending plan, and your cash flow system. Your scoreboard, your spending plan, and your cash flow system. Your scoreboard are your weekly numbers. What are your weekly numbers that you need to be hitting? How many leads do you need? How many appointments do you need? How many new clients do you need? How many people left your door? These are all numbers that if I was out at lunch with you and I said, hey, Tony, how many clients did you lose last month? That should be like that. 0 hesitation. That's how I know numbers. 3 people. It's never going to be 0, by the way. I don't care who you are. It's never going to be 0. So, but same thing. How many leads did you get last week? How many appointments did you set last week? These numbers need to be top of mind. And if you don't track them weekly, I'm not a fan. Billy's not in the room, so I can talk about money in my way. I'm not a fan of P&Ls. I love P&Ls, but I'm not a fan of them from a management perspective. They're great for like big picture finance, but P&Ls, like from your bookkeeper, in my eyes, for most of you, they're frankly useless because it already happened. The P&L is lagging. It's history. We can't change it. But if I tell you, so what's today's date? Mid-November, or 8th November, 7th November, whatever it is. Let's call it we're a quarter of the way through November. So today, if you're not a quarter of the way to your lead goal, you have to change something. If you're not a quarter of the way to your November lead goal, you need to change something. Same thing, appointment goal. If you need to get 10 appointments this month, and as of today, you don't have 3, clearly what you're doing is not going to trend well. So change it. That's why I like weekly scoreboards, because every week it allows you to adjust what you're doing the following week. So I always did my scoreboard on Fridays. Every Friday morning I had a reoccurring meeting in my planner with me, myself, and I pulled out my scoreboard and I went through all my numbers and said, what numbers need to change next week? And those were my action items for next week. Not all this other fluff that maybe didn't matter. So that's your scoreboard. Your spending plan is a very simple spreadsheet. It has 2 columns on it. So for those of you that don't like spreadsheets, I'm sure you can handle 2 columns. For those of you that love them, maybe you can make it color-coded or something. I don't know. Spending plan. Every item you're going to spend next month, column A. Column B, the amount of that item. So I should know, as of today, how much I'm going to spend in December. All of you should know that answer. How much am I going to spend in December? You know your rent, you know your utilities, you know your reoccurring softwares, you know your payroll, right? Even if you don't know it to the dollar, you can probably look at historical norms of hours and things like that. But you all should know within, like I always used to play a game with myself and say, how close can I get to like sticking to that and matching that? Like the spending plan said 65, how close could I get to 65? Right? So you get your spending plan ahead of time. So like now, do your December spending plan. So let's say, for example, your spending plan says, hey, with everything, I'm going to have to spend $12,000 in December. Now you set your sales goal. So when we mentioned this morning, what's your sales goal for this month, or do you know your sales goal? In my eyes, that's how you set your sales goal. It starts with your spending plan. How much do I need to spend next month? Because that's like break even. That's just pay my bills. Now I say, okay, I need to spend 12. I would like to pay myself 5. So I need to go gross 17. Now you take that 17 and you go to Fred or go to somebody and say, is this a $17,000 marketing plan for December? And he'll tell you yay or nay. That's enough or it's not enough, right? You can go to us and say, hey, I need to go add, like as a coach, I can't tell you how easy it is when somebody's like, hey, I need to go add 5 clients this month. Cool. Like that's so much easier rather than I need more clients, right? Get specific. And we can get specific when we can say, hey, my gap, like speak of Luke, who I mentioned earlier. Luke, we have a call every month. And Luke's call always starts with, he just actually texted me this morning. Hey, I'm like 13K short of my goal. What do I do? Love it, man. That's like my genius zone right there. But if you're like, I just want to make more money. I just got to gross more. It's really challenging, on both sides. So get clear on spending plan and make sure your marketing plan matches that. Okay. So spending plan, sales goal matches the marketing plan. And then last thing is profit first. I just literally, you'll see in this Google Doc, which has everything I've covered, because I know it's a lot. It has a link to the book. Just read the book. Literally just read the book. It's the simplest book in the world. The guy's a genius. I mean, I think every small business has adopted some version of Profit First. If you're not familiar with Profit First, it's just a simple cash flow, cash management, transfer thing. Set up a couple bank accounts. I do recommend, if you have never been exposed to Profit First, that you read Profit First for micro gyms. So there's a specific one for micro gyms. Great business model, by the way. He licensed his Profit First book to different industries. And then every industry expert, he picked an industry expert to write a book for that specific industry. So there's one for construction, there's one for real estate, et cetera. But micro gyms talks in like gym owner language. But all it is, many of Nutrition 101, is eat off a smaller plate, right? If my plate's only this big, if I put a serving on it, it's gonna look like it's mounded. Versus if I have a big old plate and I put that same serving, it's gonna look like it's nothing. So eating off a smaller plate. If I have, so funny story, Megan and I will always, my wife Megan and I will always banter because in our checking account, I keep like $300 in it. That's it. Like a couple $100 in case you need to like stop at the store or like something comes up. A couple $100. Everything else is in different accounts. Because I know psychologically, that's the account I look at. That's the account that's tied to my debit card. And so I will inevitably be a better spender and a better cash flow manager if I am intentionally poor in that account. So that is the whole concept of Profit First in a nutshell, is your money comes into one account and you just transfer it to these other accounts so that this account, the one that you check, the one that you make your business decisions off of, is always looking poor. I always want to look poor because then I make more aggressive decisions from growth and I make more aggressive decisions from buying. All right, so those are the 7 steps. Overwhelming, yes, but frankly, we talk about standards. I do believe at least 80% of that's probably standard to hit a 500K gym. But give yourself a runway of a year or 2 to implement. Like if you're sitting in this room a year from now, that's probably the time frame of implementation on all this stuff. But pick a couple things each month and chip away at them.